At 3 o'clock in the afternoon on February 19, 2013, crews across New York began moving from ATM to ATM. They carried counterfeit cards encoded with stolen account data. The pins worked, and the machines approved one withdrawal after another. By 1:26 the next morning, the New York crew had taken about $2.4 million. Around the world, cashiers in 24 countries completed roughly 36,000 transactions and withdrew about $40 million. No one had broken open the machines. The criminals had attacked the system that told them when to pay. How could just 12 prepaid card accounts become a worldwide pipeline for cash? And why did thousands of ATMs obey? An ATM does not decide by itself whether a withdrawal is legitimate. After the machine reads a card and the customer enters a PIN, it sends an authorization request through an acquiring bank and payment network. That request travels toward the card issuer or toward the company processing transactions on the issuer's behalf. It identifies the account and the amount requested. The answer returns as either an approval or a denial. To the person standing at the machine, the entire process appears almost instant. Behind the screen, however, the ATM is relying on remote systems to confirm that the card data is valid, the PIN is correct, the account can cover the withdrawal, and the transaction falls within the rules attached to that card. That remote decision point was the real target. According to federal prosecutors, the cybercrime organization penetrated payment card processors that handled prepaid debit card. The attackers manipulated administrator privileges, stole card numbers and PINs, increased the recorded balances on selected accounts, and effectively removed the withdrawal restrictions enforced by the processors. A prepaid card normally contains a fixed amount of stored value, which makes its balance and withdrawal limits essential. If criminals can change those controls inside the system trusted by the issuer, the card itself does not need to contain millions of dollars. The processor's records only need to make each repeated withdrawal appear authorized. The attackers then distributed the stolen numbers and PINs to trusted associates. Those associates encoded the data onto magnetic stripe cards, including ordinary gift cards, and passed them to local caching crews. The people withdrawing the money were not necessarily the hackers who had entered the processors. Court filings described a layered organization. Intruders controlled the compromised systems. Coordinators distributed card data and PINs. Local leaders managed the caching crews, and the cashiers performed the withdrawals. Afterward, portions of the money moved back toward the organizers while crew members kept a share. The operation required two different kinds of coordination. The hackers had to preserve access to the compromised processing systems. At the same time, cashiers had to reach thousands of ATMs in many countries before the accounts were shut down. The group had already demonstrated the method 2 months earlier. On December 22, 2012, hackers targeted prepaid MasterCard accounts issued by Rak Bank in the United Arab Emirates. More than 4,500 fraudulent ATM transactions were carried out in approximately 20 countries, producing losses of about $5 million. In and around New York City, the local crew made roughly 705 withdrawals using one compromised RAK-BHE bank account number. They took about $382,600. Justice Department summaries later rounded the New York operation to about 750 transactions, nearly $400,000, and more than 140 ATM locations in 2 hours and 25 minutes. The December attack showed why an unlimited operation was so dangerous. A single account number could be copied onto many pieces of plastic, allowing multiple cashiers to use the same data at different machines almost simultaneously. The defenders were not facing one suspicious cardholder. They were facing a distributed cash-out moving at machine speed. The next operation was much larger. In February of 2013, attackers compromised a processor handling prepaid MasterCard accounts issued by Bank Muscat in Oman. Federal court records identified 12 account numbers whose balances had been increased. The data was then distributed to caching crews in approximately 24 countries. Bank Muscat described the affected products as prepaid travel cards. They were designed to be used away from a customer's home country. That international reach did not cause the breach, but it meant the stolen account data could be used across a worldwide ATM network. The New York crew used one of those 12 compromised account numbers. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon on February 19th, cashers began spreading across the city. They carried multiple cloned cards encoded with the same account information. At each ATM, the sequence appeared routine: insert a card, enter the stolen PIN, request cash, collect the bills, and move to the next machine. Each request traveled through the payment network. The compromised processing system treated the account as having an inflated balance and a higher withdrawal ceiling. It returned an approval, and the ATM dispensed the money because that authorization appeared valid. Meanwhile, prosecutors said the organizers retained access to the processor networks so they could monitor the withdrawals. This was not simply a group of people running blindly from machine to machine. The digital intrusion and the physical cash-out were two parts of the same live operation. Across 24 countries, the process repeated tens of thousands of times. In New York, the crew completed approximately 2,904 fraudulent withdrawals and collected about $2.4 million. The same compromised account number used there was also used globally in approximately 11,777 fraudulent transactions. By itself, it caused about $8.9 million in losses. Across the entire Bank Muscat operation, cashing crews executed approximately 36,000 transactions and withdrew about $40 million in roughly 10 hours. Averaged over that period, the network was completing about one transaction every second. The practical limit was no longer the legitimate balance on the 12 cards. It was the cash available inside the machines, the number of cashers on the street, and the time remaining before the operation was stopped. The final recorded New York withdrawal occurred at approximately 1:26 in the morning on February 20th. The term unlimited operation was never literally true. The cards could keep paying only while the compromised authorization system continued approving them. Public court records establish when the New York withdrawals ended, but they do not fully describe the precise technical sequence that shut down the worldwide cash-out. Within days, Bank Muscat disclosed that 12 prepaid travel cards had been compromised outside Oman. The bank reported a gross transaction value of 15 million Omani riyals, then worth about $39 million. It also said that no customer had suffered a financial loss, and that no other Bank Muscat credit or debit cards had been affected. This was not a mass theft from thousands of personal checking or savings accounts. The publicly identified losses arose from the compromised prepaid card program and the institution supporting it. Investigators then followed the money left behind by the New York cell. Prosecutors said crew members purchased portable luxury goods, including expensive watches and cars. In one transaction, nearly $150,000 and 7,491 $20 bills was deposited into a Miami bank account controlled by Alberto UC Lajude Peña, whom prosecutors identified as the leader of the New York cell. A later superseding indictment alleged that approximately $800,000 in cash was packed into luggage and transported by bus to Florida for delivery to an organizer. The detail revealed the central contradiction of the operation. A highly technical global intrusion ultimately produced mountains of physical currency that still had to be moved, divided, and laundered. Lajude Peña was reported murdered in the Dominican Republic on April 27, 2013. Public statements from authorities did not establish that his death was connected to the cyber heist, and the evidence does not support presenting it as part of the operation's plot. Federal prosecutors announced charges against members of the New York cell in May of 2013. Guilty pleas and sentences followed. The investigation also continued toward those accused of organizing the intrusions rather than merely withdrawing the cash. Erkan Findikoglu, a Turkish hacker known online as Segate, Predator, and Orion, was arrested in Frankfurt on December 18, 2013. He was extradited to the United States in June of 2015 and pleaded guilty in March of 2016 to computer intrusion and access device fraud offenses. In February of 2017, a federal judge sentenced him to 8 years in prison and ordered him to pay $55,080,200 $226.14 in restitution. That amount covered 3 unlimited operations carried out between 2011 and 2013, not only the Bank Muscat attack. The case exposed a weakness created by concentrated trust. A single ATM on a New York street did not know that the same account number was being used at machines around the world. It received card data, a PIN, and an authorization response from the financial network behind it. The charge scheme did not require criminals to break into or reprogram every ATM. Once the processing systems were compromised, thousands of separate machines could be made to rely on the same false account information. Each machine performed the task it had been designed to perform. That was the problem. 12 account numbers were enough to support a global cash-out. 10 hours were enough for approximately 36,000 transactions, and about $40 million passed through ordinary ATM cash slots, one apparently authorized withdrawal at a time. The most unsettling part of the heist was not that thousands of ATMs malfunctioned. It was that they obeyed. For more carefully researched stories about the hidden systems behind extraordinary true events, subscribe to Veil. And tell us which case we should investigate next.